So good morning to everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to this presentation. And I'd like to thank Reverend Shannon and Carol Lenox for this opportunity to work together. It has been positive, informative, and a nice way to prepare for Earth Day and beyond. I can't stress enough how important it is to be thinking about the future of the planet and how our choices now impact the future. This is a vision of the Earth. It's one of Hildegard's visions. I guess we'll move into opening prayer.
Sorry, I slipped there, Mary.
That's okay, go for it. We'll do our opening prayer. I, the highest and fiery power, have kindled every spark of life. I, the fiery life of divine essence, am a flame beyond the beauty of the meadows. I gleam in the waters, and I burn in the sun, moon, and stars. With every breeze, as with the invisible life that contains everything, I awaken everything to life. The air lives by turning green and being in bloom. The waters flow as if they were alive. The sun lives in its light, and the moon is enkindled after its disappearance, once again by the light of the sun, so that the moon is again revived. And thus I remain hidden in every kind of reality as a fiery power. Everything burns because of me in the way our breath constantly moves us, like the wind-tossed flame in a fire.
So we're going to start with some music just to kind of bring ourselves into the time together. And we're going to hope this works as I share my sound. So someone will let me know if you can't hear the sound when I start playing. And this is an indigenous musician giving us Amazing Grace via flute. Again, welcome everyone. Just to give you a kind of a feel for the flow over the next, 50 minutes to an hour, we're going to give a little bit of background on the idea of eco-spirituality, and then we're going to move into a Lectio Divina exercise, a prayerful reading of a few texts. We'll be pulling a text from Hildegard of Bingen and then another text from Pope Francis, again, sort of getting at this idea of bringing the ecological and the spiritual together in our lives. And then we'll follow that up with more of the practical side, some ideas for ways that you can move out into the world and take action, becoming better caretakers for all of creation. And anytime anybody has a comment or question or something they'd like to add, please join in. So talking about, just starting with, what is eco-spirituality? That word has many definitions. Many people are talking about it now. There are lots of books coming out. So there's really not one, sort of established definition, but taking from good old Wikipedia, which I thought summarized it pretty well. It said, eco-spirituality has been defined as a manifestation of the spiritual connection between human beings and the environment. The new millennium and the modern ecological crisis has created a need for environmentally based religion and spirituality. Proponents may come from a range of faiths, and although many of their practices and beliefs may differ, a central claim is that there is a spiritual dimension to our present ecological crisis. According to the environmentalist Sister Virginia Jones, eco-spirituality is about helping people experience the holy in the natural world and to recognize their relationship as human beings to all of creation. I brought in a quote by Passionist priest Thomas Berry. He's been named a lot of things: cultural historian, priest, other. He often called himself a geologian instead of a theologian. But he says at one point, the universe itself is the primary sacred community. All human religion should be considered as participation in the religious aspect of the universe itself. It is false to say that humanity is the most excellent being in the universe. The most excellent being in the universe is the universe itself. So he would often say that every being brings its own unique, like birds are best at flying. We're best at self-conscious reflection. So it's this idea of that there's not having necessarily this old idea of a chain of beings, but that all beings bring something unique, and something is lost when that uniqueness of that being is no longer with us. So Laudato Si, many of you may already be familiar with it. If you aren't familiar with it, if you've never read it, it's really a really great document, an encyclical by Pope Francis. It was published in 2015. I heard a priest recently say it's astonishing to him how it's one of the least read documents within the American clergy, which is just astonishing to me, but it's so worth reading. He starts it off giving sort of an ode to St. Francis of Assisi, who he took his name from, and St. Francis's Chronicle, where he says, "Praise be to you, my Lord." In the words of this beautiful canticle, St. Francis of Assisi reminds us that our common home is like a sister with whom we share our life, and a beautiful mother who opens her arms to embrace us. This sister now cries out to us because of the harm we have inflicted. I pulled a few quotes out of the numbers, or the different paragraph numbers within the encyclical. You can get it in book form, like this is a copy of a book form, but it's also available on the Vatican's website. So in paragraph 217, he says, the ecological crisis is also a summons to a profound interior conversion. Living our vocation to be protectors of God's handiwork is essential to a life of virtue. It is not an optional or secondary aspect of our Christian experience. In paragraph 84, he said, God has written a precious book whose letters are the multitude of created things present in the universe. The Canadian bishops rightly point out that no creature is excluded from this manifestation of God. From panoramic vistas to the tiniest living form, nature is a constant source of wonder and awe. It is also a continuing revelation of the divine. The bishops of Japan, for their part, made a thought-provoking observation. To sense each creature singing the hymn of its existence is to live joyfully in God's love and hope. I'm just going to read that quote again because I love it so much. To sense each creature singing the hymn of its existence is to live joyfully in God's love and hope. This contemplation of creation allows us to discover in each thing a teaching which God wishes to hand on to us, since for the believer to contemplate creation is to hear a message, to listen to a paradoxical and silent voice. So we're going to do this Lectio Divina process. Although we're not going to be taking, traditional Lectio Divina is the sacred scriptures. But kind of coming from this idea that the sacred is in everything and that all texts are sacred. We're going to take texts that aren't scriptural texts. And we're going to go through a process. We're going to read it out loud 3 times. So the first time I'll read it. Just listen in whatever way you listen best. Close your eyes or follow along with the words, whatever way you take things in best. Listen to what is being said. I'll pause for a minute after that first reading and then read it a second time. That second time, listen for a word or a phrase that touches you, resonates with you, maybe even you feel pushback on. But listen for something that comes to you. And after that second reading, I'll just invite people as they would like to enter into the chat or speak out loud their word or phrase. And so we'll just take a moment to allow that process to happen. And then after everyone has offered up their word or phrase, we'll open it up. And if 1, 2, or 3 people would like to share, we'd love to have that interaction where you can share why what you chose resonated with you or what came to you as you listened to the readings. After we go through that, after we've heard from a few people, Mary's going to read the text for a 3rd time to close us out. Any questions about that before we go to the first text? Okay. So this first text is compiled from the Book of Divine Works by Hildegard. So it comes from a couple different places within, I think, 2 of her visions. So. Wisdom does not ignore the outward creatures, those that fly in the air, walk or creep upon the earth, and swim in the waters, and whose spirits pass away with their flesh. Rather, she quickens and sustains them, for they devote their service to humankind who is fed by them. Indeed, they are all like wisdom's adornment with pearls, because they do not transgress their own nature. While humankind often steps beyond the right way set for them, all of wisdom's works are so fully and comprehensively fortified that no creature is left so incomplete that it lacks whatever it needs for its own nature. Rather, each possesses in itself the fullness of total perfection and usefulness. Thus, all things that have come forth through wisdom are like the purest and most elegant beauty within her, gleaming with the radiant brilliance of their being. When the human person fulfills the precepts of God's command, she too is wisdom shining in her green garment. God made humankind in God's image and likeness and gave them the power of enacting to do what is good. Humankind was made in the likeness of God to know, to think, to act. And it is love that fulfills God's entire will. The virtues that are at work in humans display love as if she were adorned with noble beauty, since all good things come about through love. God gave humankind the living breath and rationality which operates with the kiss of choice, the knowledge of good and evil. God gave us the power of enacting in which we can choose the path we will take. In the beginning, all creation was verdant. Flowers blossomed in its midst. Only later did viridity fall away. Remember that the fullness first made need not have withered. We can choose the path we will travel. We can act. I'll read it for the 2nd time. And again, this time, listen for something that resonates with you. Wisdom does not ignore the outward creatures, those that fly in the air, walk or creep upon the earth, and swim in the waters, and whose spirits pass away with their flesh. Rather, she quickens and sustains them, for they devote their service to humankind who is fed by them. Indeed, they are like wisdom's adornment with pearls, because they do not transgress their own nature. while humankind often steps beyond the right way set for them. All of wisdom's works are so fully and comprehensively fortified that no creature is left so incomplete that it lacks whatever it needs for its own nature. Rather, each possesses in itself the fullness of total perfection and usefulness. Thus, all things that have come forth through wisdom are like the purest and most elegant beauty within her, gleaming with the radiant brilliance of their being. When the human person fulfills the precepts of God's commands, she too is wisdom shining and her green garment. God made humankind in God's image and likeness and gave them the power of enacting to do what is good. Humankind was made in the likeness of God to know, to think, to act, and it is love that fulfills God's entire will. The virtues that are at work in humans display love as if she were adorned with noble beauty, since all good things come about through love. God gave humankind the living breath and rationality which operates with the kiss of choice, the knowledge of good and evil. God gave us the power of enacting in which we can choose the path we will take. In the beginning, all creation was verdant, flowers blossomed in its midst. Only later did viridity fall away. Remember that the fullness first made need not have withered. We can choose the path we will travel. We can act. So I invite people to go into the chat and offer up a word or phrase that resonates with them from this. Or if you want, when we open the floor, if you want to just speak it out, you can do that as well.
Carol,
Yes,
maybe I'll read these from the chat.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Humankind often steps beyond the right way set them. They do not transgress their own nature. God gave humankind the kiss of choice, fullness of perfection. We can choose the path we will travel. Power of enactments. Love. I can choose to not use plastic. Wisdom shining in her green garment. We can act. No creature lacks whatever it needs for its own nature. Each possesses in itself the fullness of total perfection. In the beginning was the garden.
So thank you all for that. It's beautiful to hear what resonates, and you see where different things speak to different people. So I'll open it up if one or two or three would like to share why they chose what they chose, or what really struck them about this reading, or something, yeah, something that really speaks to them. So I'll just open the floor if people want to raise their little hand on the screen, or if I can see you and you raise your hand, we can call on you. Debbie, thank you.
When reading this and listening to it, God set forth in his creation and in nature a balance. And so for me, when humankind, which was given a choice in a sense, and yet to overstep it, we upset that balance. And so I think wisdom has to come back into play so we can allow this balance to come back and not overstep it just because we can.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Shannon?
I love this image of wisdom and her green garment. You know, just this concept of Viriditas and Hildegard, and while it's certainly she applied it spiritually and intellectually, you know, it was also physical. And as we're in spring and the greenness is starting to come back, I this image of restoring the natural aridity and restoring where we've become dry and brittle, I think just really resonates with me.
I was thinking, Shannon, when you were sharing about the butterflies, you know, that we're getting ready, at least in our part of the country, to have this massive explosion of cicadas. And we all who've experienced any cicadas know the noise that comes with it. But actually, I was reading what a feast it is for the other beings. So it's going to give me a different take on the noise. You know, it feeds the birds and bears. We have bears around here, turtles and fish, squirrels and raccoons. And then when they're fed and their carcasses die away, it actually feeds the soil. So it's given me a new outlook, like I said, on these little things flying around for however long they're here.
Well, you know, I have the same attitude towards mice. I don't like mice. I'm going to say that right now. They're adorable when you're looking at their little whiskers and stuff, but I do not like them in the buildings or the house or anything like that. But we do have neighborhood cats, and they constantly leave dead mice for me in front of the St. Francis statue, which is hilarious. I think they think it's a person. So I'm constantly burying mice in our gardens. And one of the things that even when we occasionally have to set traps in the church, which I don't like to do, but you know, the church would get overrun pretty quickly if we didn't. You know, I have a very strict rule. I always tell Rick, do not throw them in the garbage. They're still God's creatures. If you have to catch them, at least bury them. And so our gardens here are full of mice and birds, you know, because same thing. And so I'm wondering if that's part of it. I think the richness of our gardens is the bees, but I think it's also, as you just said, Carol, because there's so many mice and birds going back into the soil and nourishing our gardens. And so while it's sad that death has to occur in the way it does, it's still going back into this cycle of life.
Yeah. Great. Thanks. Sue, I see your hand up.
Well, the line I liked was the one that says they do not transgress their own nature. And I'm thinking, you know, where we really went off the rails is when we started to get all the money that we could out of nature to exploit it to the nth degree. And we used to do that with people in the agricultural age, and we still do to a certain extent, but we kind of shifted towards nature to wring out every single dollar that we can. And I think of the indigenous people that we have kind of disdained and really treated abominably in this country over the last couple hundred years, that really we're kind of gravitating a little bit back toward them and their wisdom to say, you know, we really messed up here, and we need a way back to restore the wholeness of creation. So that line really resonated with me.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. It reminds me of, so Thomas Berry speaks at one point about how one of the greatest offenses that you can do to another person is to use them. And he would say, you know, if someone tells me you used me, then we would be shocked and sad, and we might try to make amends. And then he goes on to say, you know, but the earth could say the same thing to us, you used me. And then he goes on to speak for the earth, saying, I have all these beautiful things to give you. You know, I have beauty, I have nourishment, I have life. Most of all, I give you my presence, but I ask you not to use me. It's really a profound thing to think about, and hard to get away from in our society. So, Dave or Mary?
Yeah, I'm just looking back on the term "we can act" is in there, and I tend to get overwhelmed at this point by what can I do to help things? How can I, as one person, make a difference? And it's really difficult. I mean, there are so many things pulling in different directions. It's nice to get grounded in Hildegard and be able to see what the path is, because it's so easy to get overwhelmed and so easy to get just depressed about how things are going in the world, and to link it back into our faith kind of makes it less overwhelming.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Because it can be overwhelming. Margie.
Thank you. I concur with Dave entirely. And what struck me in the reading was that phrase, to know, to think, to act in love. And I'm thinking that this this is amazing to me that Hildegard was speaking in that language, because it seems, I may not have this correct theologically, but it seems to be the premise behind a lot of liberation theology and a lot of conversations, know, gather the information, think about what the scripture says about it, and then act. And it's just astonishing to me that it's something that she thought of too,
Mhm.
so long ago.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll move to Mary reading it for the third time, just to kind of bring it all back in, and then we will move on. We have a second reading that we're gonna do. So Mary, whenever you want.
Wisdom does not ignore the outward creatures, those that fly in the air, walk or creep upon the earth, and swim in the waters, and those and whose spirits pass away with their flesh. Rather, she quickens and sustains them, for they devote their service to humankind, who is fed by them. Indeed, they are like wisdom's adornment with pearls, because they do not transgress their own nature. While humankind often steps beyond the right way set for them, all of wisdom's works are so fully and comprehensively fortified that no creature is left so incomplete that it lacks whatever it needs for its own nature. Rather, each possesses in itself the fullness of total perfection and usefulness. Thus, all things that have come forth through wisdom are like the purest and most elegant beauty within her, gleaming with radiant brilliance of their being. When the human person fulfills the precept of God's commands, she too is wisdom, shining in her garment, her green garment. God made humankind in God's image and likeness and gave them the power of enacting to do what is good. Pardon me. Humankind was made in the likeness of God to know, to think, to act. And it is love that fulfills God's entire will. The virtues that are at work in humans display love as if she were adorned with noble beauty, since all good things comes about through love. God gave humankind the living breath and rationality, which operates with the kiss of choice, the knowledge of good and evil. God gave us the power of enacting in which we choose the path we will take. In the beginning, all creation was verdant. Flowers blossomed in its midst. Only later did viridity fall away. Remember that the fullness first made need not have withered. We can choose the path we will travel. We can act.
So our second reading is going to come again from Laudato Si by Pope Francis. So we'll follow the same process where I'll read it first. We'll take a pause, just listen. And then second time, be listening in your heart for what speaks to you. Oh, I'm wrong. Originally, it was going to be Pope Francis, and then I traded it out for Elizabeth Johnson. So sorry about that, but it's actually Elizabeth Johnson, which is good. Okay. The commitment to ecological wholeness in partnership with a more just social order is the vocation which best corresponds to God's own loving intent for our corner of creation. We all share the status of creaturehood. We are all kin in the evolving community of life now under siege. Our vision must be one of flourishing for all. The immediate aim is to establish and protect healthy ecosystems where all living creatures, including poor human beings and plants and animals being driven to extinction, can thrive. The long-term goal is a socially just and environmentally sustainable society in which the needs of all people are met and diverse species can prosper, onward to an evolutionary future that will still surprise. A flourishing humanity on a thriving planet, rich in species, in an evolving universe, altogether filled with the glory of God. Such is the vision that must guide us at this critical time of Earth's distress to practical and critical effect. Ignoring this view keeps people of faith and their churches locked into irrelevance, while a terrible drama of life and death is being played out in the real world. By contrast, living the ecological vocation in the power of the Spirit sets us off on a great adventure of mind and heart, expanding the repertoire of our love. So I'll read it a second time. Again, this is Elizabeth Johnson, Ask the Beasts. The commitment to ecological wholeness in partnership with a more just social order is the vocation which best corresponds to God's own loving intent for our corner of creation. We all share the status of creaturehood. We are all kin in the evolving community of life now under siege. Our vision must be one of flourishing for all. The immediate aim is to establish and protect healthy ecosystems where all creatures, including poor human beings and plants and animals being driven to extinction, can thrive. The long-term goal is a socially just and environmentally sustainable society in which the needs of all people are met and diverse species can prosper, onward to an evolutionary future that will still surprise. A flourishing humanity on a thriving planet, rich in species, in an evolving universe, altogether filled with the glory of God. Such is the vision that must guide us at this critical time of Earth's distress to practical and critical effect. Ignoring this view keep people of faith and their churches locked into irrelevance, while a terrible drama of life and death is being played out in the real world. By contrast, living the ecological vocation in the power of the Spirit sets us off on a great adventure of mind and heart, expanding the repertoire of our love. So again, I invite you to share in the chat that which speaks to you.
I'll read the ones in the chat. Great adventure of mind and heart. We are all kin in the evolving community of life. We all share the status of creaturehood. Evolving universe. Flourishing for all. We all share the status of creaturehood. The needs of all people are met. Living the ecological vocation.
So again, I open the floor, invite anyone who would like to share to share. Shannon.
Yeah, I love this image of living the ecological vocation as being set out on an adventure. And I think, any vocation just means to call. When God calls or the Spirit calls us, I think if we can embrace it more as an adventure of mind and heart, rather than be fearful of the unknown or whatever that might be, I think it just changes the perspective. So I think that's a powerful image there.
Shannon. Anyone else?
I'm not sure how to jump in on this.
ahead,
I
Kate.
like the line, our vision must be one of flourishing for all as well. And it was actually, it started out a little bit as a joke in my mind, but Shannon knows how afraid I am of mice. And I really, my thing is always just get rid of them, but they are God's creatures, and you know, they do deserve, I mean, they were given a life as well. And it's something for me to really think about and work on, because it's true, they are God's creatures.
Peggy, next time I have one to bury, we'll do a joint ceremony and
Oh
maybe
no.
you can do
I
the
don't know if I'm
prayers
gonna
and
be that
sprinkle the
brave.
holy water over the grave. How's that?
Okay, I'll do that.
As we often say in our household with certain creatures that can get inside, we want you to flourish, but we'd like you to flourish outside, please.
Outside, yes, outside. That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Peggy.
I
Debbie?
think,
Oh,
I think the problem, I think one of the challenges of these kinds of readings is that they are ideas, principles, and not really much advice in terms of practicality. I think somebody earlier said, how do we go about doing it? It's so frustrating not to know what to do that could truly be useful.
Mhm.
thanks, Dagmar. I don't disagree. I was thinking actually after Dave spoke, I think kind of a founding philosophy that I gained from Thomas Berry was he said, you know, all of our efforts. So I work for the EPA and I work on energy transition. And so maybe this is why it spoke to me, because he specifically talked about energy transition in his quote. And this is a paraphrase, but he kind of says all of our effort towards renewable energy and other means of meeting our needs without harming the environment, they're all well and good and necessary, but ultimately only the sense of the sacred will save us, because it's only in that sense of the sacred where we're going to have the energy as humankind to come together and do what needs to be done. So that's kind of where this type of process comes from. It's trying to touch our hearts and give us that energy to then go out and say, you know, what can I do? Or maybe right now I just rest in this. Maybe right now I just have a spiritual experience when butterflies proliferate in my yard, and I don't think about now this is what I need, you know, that comes later. But so that's what this process is really designed for, is to bring about that sense of the sacred within us. And then we are gonna, in the next slide, we're gonna start to get into just offering up some ideas for things that can be done.
Oh, okay. I like the sense of the sacred a lot, although I don't know how to do that either exactly.
I think Shannon expressed it. She experienced a sense of the sacred in the butterflies and was running around taking pictures and just thinking, have I died and gone to heaven or something? So that's an experience of that. Yeah. Debbie?
I think that sentence that says ignoring this view keeps people of faith in their churches locked into irrelevance while a terrible drama of life and death is being played out in the real world. Here is an opportunity, because this is communities that gather together out of a sense of spirituality, and it's kind of at the core. The churches should be the ones leading the charge, so to speak, helping to make people aware, and then to look towards those who are working in those areas to give us those practical ideas of how we can work together to help alleviate this. And too many times people want to ignore it. People still say there's there's no climate change. Oh no, we're not doing this. It's that awareness that has to come and then open us up to, well, we have to do something. And that's the action that can follow. And churches should be pivotal at this point right now, because governments and other powers that are trying to abuse nature for money, power, domination. That's not doing any good, but we can see, unfortunately, in the wrong way, how how religion can make an effect even with the political field. So I think churches need to step up also to that and help people.
Dave or Mary?
Yeah, I was just thinking and looking back at my life, and when I was in high school in 1970, there was the very first Earth Walk that I participated in. And at the time, I was also working on becoming confirmed in my church. But I never ever made a connection of the spiritual and the physical, the I was anti-pollution and anti this and anti that, but never really brought it back around into a wholeness, that Saint Hildegard is always talking about the veridity and and the togetherness of it. And I never really made that connection. And this is kind of bringing it all together for me.
Great, thanks, Dave. I think that's a common experience. When I went to get my master's in pastoral studies, I took my focus area. We had to choose a focus area. My focus area was spirituality and ecology. And I'll never forget saying to my sister, who's a very strong person of faith, Catholic person of faith, that was my focus area. And she just looked at me and said, "What in the world does ecology have to do with spirituality?" So I've always, kind of carried that with me. There was a time where I might have had that same question to somebody, but I do think it's changing. So thank you.
I also think we need to have the humility to listen to the young. The young people are way ahead of us on this one.
Yeah.
They may not call it spirituality, but it's their reality. That Greta person, when she was 7 years old, stopped going to school and started sitting in. And I look at my kids and grandkids, they're so ahead of us. So it's time to follow the young people.
Good point.
Yeah.
So Shannon, I know you were going to say something, and then we'll go to Margie.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on about the comment about the churches taking the lead. I'm now in no way, shape, or form surprised, Carol, but when you mentioned that Laudato Si is one of the least read documents of Francis by the U.S. clergy, not surprised, but it's very heartbreaking because I think it's probably one of the most well-read encyclicals by the laity from Pope Francis. But and just goes to show the gap between where the people are at and where the clergy are at. But even before Francis, Pope Benedict wrote a lovely document called the 10 Commandments of the Environment. And I would imagine most of the U.S. clergy don't even know that one existed, even though they'll quote Benedict in so many other ways. But, so the wisdom is there. It's just, we just, as people of faith and communities, churches, we really do need to be the ones who are on the forefront of making it visible. So, but thank you for that fact, because again, not shocked by it, but it's still very sad.
Well, and thank you for offering up this space for our community to have this conversation. So, Margie.
I think we have our marching orders in a way. The long-term goal is a socially just and environmentally sustainable society in which the needs of all people are met. And I know that can be parsed down and unpacked in all sorts of ways. And what strikes me, and what is the big challenge, I think, culturally, is the idea of a more just social order, and the idea of a world where the needs of all are met, and it's not about profit or exploitation. That cultural shift is huge and challenging, and perhaps it does, at one level begin with us each individually in our interactions with each other and with our world.
Thanks, Margie. So why don't we read it the last time, Mary, and then we'll move into the more active oriented portion.
The commitment to ecological wholeness in partnership with a more just social order is the vocation which best corresponds to God's own loving intent for our corner of creation. We all share the status of creaturehood. We are all kin in the evolving community of life now under siege. Our vision must be one of flourishing for all. The immediate aim is to establish and protect healthy ecosystems where all creatures, including poor human beings and plants and animals being driven to extinction, can thrive. The long-term goal is a socially just and environmentally sustainable society in which the needs of all people are met and diverse species can prosper onward to an evolutionary future that will still surprise. A flourishing humanity on a thriving planet, rich in species, in an evolving universe, altogether filled with the glory of God. Such is the vision that must guide us at this critical time of Earth's distress to practical and critical effect. Ignoring this view keeps people of faith in their churches locked into irrelevance while a terrible drama of life and death is being played out in the real world. By contrast, living the ecological vocation in the power of the Spirit sets us off on a great adventure of mind and heart, expanding the repertoire of our love. So we're moving on to enacting eco-justice, sorry. We need to open our minds and hearts in action to God's creation and cherish our world, cherish the mice, the ants, the spiders, the rats. We need to connect with nature, take a walk outdoors, and revisit the beauty of God's creation. We need to rewild, reduce, reuse, repurpose, regenerate, renew, respect, rehome, recreate. We need to survey our piece of the world and evaluate the ecosystem. We need to conserve water, plant pollinator species, grow our own food. Join a local, state, or national organization dedicated to nature. Support governmental actions to protect the natural world. It's funny, I was listening to Dave talking about in 1970 was the start of the first Earth Day. And right after the start of the first Earth Day, they created EPA. And then the National Environmental Education Act, and then the Occupational Safety and Health Act. Then came the Clean Air Act, and then the Clean Water Act in 1972. So very early in the beginning of this Earth Day milieu, all these governmental agencies were formed and born to protect our global world. And we need to pray with intention to heal broken relationships between humans and non-humans in our world.
And this list and the next list, they're not meant to overwhelm. They're meant to just offer up suggestions. Like even just taking one thing and saying, you know, this I'm going to look into. I listened to something Elizabeth Johnson, a talk that she gave the other day, and she said at one point, if all of us just did one thing, imagine the change that would take place.
So we need to find our wild, plant wildly, rewild our refrigerators, build community, and do rewild swaps. Some of the sustainability practices we can adopt, you know, compost, use rain barrels, diversify, decrease the use of harmful pesticides. If we all just didn't use pesticides, the bees and ants would thrive. Choosing to use natural products instead of toxic chemical concoctions. Like we can kill weeds with vinegar and Dawn and hot water. We don't have to use Roundup. There's we could think back to in the 70s, those hippies, the young people of those times. You know, Joni Mitchell wrote a beautiful song railing against DDT. And look, we got rid of DDT and our world is starting to thrive again. And it's continuing to thrive. In 2000, that's all right. Every
Well,
Earth Day,
I remember in 1970, that was the first time we campaigned. We started a campaign on Earth Day. The Clean Water Act, Lake Erie was full of dead fish. I mean, I remember because we had a house right across the street, and within a decade, the lake rejuvenated. I mean, this is the beauty of ecology, is that it's alive and can heal if we give it simply space to heal.
Yeah, but didn't the lamprey eel have a lot to do with that? I mean, I was at Lakeside, which is across from your house, you know.
Lakeside, what do you mean?
Well, when I was a kid and I'd go swimming at Lakeside, I'd get really, really ill. Okay. But a few years later, the lamprey eel came and kind of infiltrated Lake Erie.
Oh, the zebra mussel.
Oh, what zebra mussel? Okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it made a huge
Well,
difference. And it wasn't mankind did it. I mean,
oh no, but there was a lot of work done on cleaning up the lake. The zebra mussel was symbolic, I think. It came with from a Russian tanker. But no, there was a lot of effort at the federal level for the Clean Water Act, compacts between Ohio and Canada. It was a very active time, but now they are doing away with the EPA efforts for all practical purposes, except for the young people. Instinctively, young people are on the side of the earth.
yeah, our U.S. representative here is pretty tough on that, though. He's pretty active in keeping the lake clean.
Yeah.
I gotta take my hat off to him anyway.
Mary and Carol, before you switch the slide, I just wanted to say something about these sustainability practices. Very proud to say that at least 4 of those practices, I don't know how much we've diversified out here, although we're working on it with our gardens, but we compost here, we have rain barrels, we do not use harmful pesticides of any kind, and we do our best to use natural products. So I'm just very proud that the Hildegard Haus has embodied many of these. But one of the things I just wanted to add to this, Mary, you talked about the weeds, is that I think we're also growing in our awareness that for so long what we thought were weeds, dandelions, plantain, things like that, we've come to find are actually really important plants, not only for the critters like the bees and other pollinators and things like that, but for humans. They're not only edible, but they're just packed with healing nutrients. And so I think we've changed our, we have signs around the church property here that say, please excuse the weeds, we're feeding the bees, but we're not only feeding the bees, we're feeding ourselves and all of that. So I think just recognizing that what we've for so long seen as a weed, we're now seeing really has a very vital role in our yards and our properties. So, but as I was reading through that, I'm very proud to say the Hildegard Haus is really on top of a lot of those sustainability practices.
So, and just one more thing about the Earth Day, go to earthday.org, and they have adopted to reduce plastics, 60% of plastics by the year 2040. And so that is a really good goal. If one thing you can do, if you can buy your laundry detergent in cardboard, you can buy your dish soap in cardboard, or use shampoo that doesn't come in a plastic jug. This all helps. Okay, so our chosen charity for April is Rewild. I invite all of you to go visit their website. It's a fascinating website and all the things that they are doing. And one letter to your congressperson can help. Climate Citizens Lobby is a local group. Donna invited us all to last week to join that group. And if we just write one letter, we have congresspeople and senators that are aware of climate change and do want to do something about it. And our little voice, by sitting down and writing one letter or penning it on, saving the ink and the paper, you can pen it on your computer and send it off.
And
But-
at the state level, you have the EPA, the state EPA, that has to work at making sure that the runoff from the chemicals don't destroy the lake all over again.
These are all true statements. Rewild is, their focus is, nature is the most effective solution to the interconnected climate and biodiversity and human well-being crisis. So nature can heal itself, just like Dagmar pointed out to all of us. There's a couple things in the chat. Rewild works with local communities. They don't impose from the outside. This is great. Thanks for this great recommendation.
Richard, did you have something you wanted to share? You're muted. Still can't hear you. There you go.
There I go. Dandelions, just a couple quick things. Talked to a gentleman the other day. He was looking for dandelions so he could make his dandelion wine. And I didn't have enough in my yard to give him. Also, when I was growing up, Mother made salads from the dandelion greens. So we had dandelion greens and bacon chips and so on. So certainly are reusable. Anyway, and this whole conversation reminds me, and I won't elaborate too much, but about my experience growing up on farms. Just the whole closeness to nature was unbelievable. And that's it. Thanks, Len.
Thank you, Richard.
I think Margie had a comment in the chat about rewilding our refrigerators, which I think Richard started to just talk about, but I don't know if you saw that, Mary.
Yes, and if there's a whole page on there, a web page devoted to how to rewild your refrigerator. I invite everyone to go and spend a little time on their website. They're trying to they're working towards saving Asian and African elephants, the northern white and Sumatra rhino, the Victorian grasslands, earless dragon, the Tasmanian devils. All these species are very important to their ecosystems, and we need to preserve, protect, and repopulate these populations. They have a 10-year conservation strategy to breed these animals and reconnect them to their environments. There's a whole bunch of other animals that have been found to be extinct, and some have been found after 100 years. The Attenborough long-beaded echinidia. So it's a fun website. Go see these animals that are extinct and they're looking for. Okay, and rewild your refrigerator. Substitute oat milk. That will save 58,000 gallons of water and land equal to 2 tennis courts. A plant-based diet, 75% less greenhouse gases, 75% less land use, 54% less waste of water, 66% less of biodiversity loss. So rewilding your refrigerator is something we all can do.
And Mary, as a lifelong vegetarian, I just want to add that, it doesn't necessarily, what you just said is exactly true, but at the same time, doesn't mean that everybody has to be like 100% vegetarian or 100% plant-based. But even if just, and I know you've heard this term before, but like meatless Mondays, one day a week, maybe substituting a plant-based diet so that, it's a both and, so that there isn't, so I've learned that over the years myself. I'm a vegetarian for a number of different reasons, but at the same time, I think we could make a world of difference, all of us, not necessarily by everybody becoming vegetarian, but just one day a week or, something like that, and experimenting with new plant-based recipes or something, just to, again, to keep it a both and not necessarily create an either or context. So I just want to add that.
I think a whole other thing that seldom gets spoken about is we need to take down fences and borders, because animals, their pets, like the elephants, it isn't just about them dying out and being killed for tusks. They can't find their way to their breeding places and food places because human development, the first thing they do is put up a fence. And that's it. For many animals, they can't cross over.
That's a good point. Thank you, Dagmar.
So I think we're gonna thank you all for hanging in with us and sharing. You never know when you put these things together if people are going to be willing to join in. So I'm so appreciative of the fact that everybody has joined in. I just have this one page of resources and then just sort of a closing poem to send us out. And this is just if you have interest in reading further about this idea of eco-spirituality or coming to a sense of the sacred. Thomas Berry, I already mentioned, has been a big teacher for me. So Dream of the Earth is one of his most well-known books. In the middle, Diarmuid, I don't know how to say his name, Omerchu, is a priest from Ireland. He just recently published a book called Ecological Spirituality. Elizabeth Johnson, she's written a number of things. And Ask the Beast, we took the quote from, is amazing. But she has a new book out called Come Have Breakfast, which is a series of meditations. So it's more of a spiritual, you sit down with a cup of tea or coffee and read one of her meditations for the morning. If you look at the Celtic stream, of course, there's a lot of connection with the natural world and the Celtic stream. So John O'Donoghue has a book called Beauty, which again is a lot of just meditations, and they're really beautiful. John Philip Newell has a book called Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul. And then moving outside of Christianity, Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass. I say
That's
it
a great
every time
book.
I bring it up. It's probably my favorite book, or it would be in my top 3 favorite books of all time. Highly, highly recommend it. And then Thich Nhat Hanh has a book called Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet. So there's just a few. I know if people want to enter into chat any resources they have, we'd love to hear other ones. These were just a few that came to mind. But I thought I'd end us with a poem from the poet Wendell Berry. He's an American poet, well known for a lot of his nature descriptions within his poetry and within his prose writing. So we'll end there, and I'm sure Mary and I can hang on if anybody wants to have any final conversation. But again, I thank you everybody for joining in with us. Mary, do you want to read the closing poem?
Sure, thanks, Carol. The Peace of Wild Things. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day blind stars. with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Amen to that. Again, thank you, everybody. Mary, do you want to talk about what you're going to be sending out?
Sure. This week I'll be sending a, do you want to go back to the first slide? A vision card from Vision of the Earth, Cosmos. It's Hildegard's Cosmos, Body and Soul with the seasons and months. And each of, we'll send out to the whole community a vision card, and then a handout I'd made up of the things we can do to heal the earth, or just 1, 2, or 3 little things you can do to help heal our global world.
Can I say something?
Yes, sure. Thank you.
So next week at Coffee and Donuts, bring your own plate or your own cloth napkin and your own mug for the coffee. And then, in a little like think of it as a picnic. And then you'll be reducing any waste that might occur with coffee and donuts.
Thank you.
Great
Yeah,
idea.
thank you, Connie. I think the only piece of that we don't have present are the cloth napkins, but I did hear some conversation with the hospitality committee about that. We did invest here last year, 2 years ago, whenever it was, in a dishwasher. And so we do have mugs and plates, but we also have a sign, and what you just said, Connie, that Dave and Mary Reininger gave us, that says, what does it say, Mary? Something like bring a cup, fill it up, or something like that, hanging over the coffee pot. So thank you for that reminder, Connie.
Bring a cup and fill it up.
Yes.
But
And it's a very German looking sign, so it goes very nicely over our coffee bar. So, but thank you for that reminder, Connie. And we will be
everywhere you
serving
go, if you start
coffee.
doing that wherever you go, bring your own
Mhm.
silverware, then people start noticing. And it's sometimes it, makes them feel uncomfortable, but it's a good prick on the conscience. And yeah, I mean, it's great that you have a dishwasher, but everyone just bringing their own and then bringing it back for them to wash themselves is also a thing that doesn't burden anyone at a church to have to be in charge of doing the dishes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Connie. And I want to thank Carol and Mary. This was really a beautiful presentation. And of course, it touched my heart that it was so rooted in Hildegard of Bingen. So, but just the time you put into it and the thought, it was for me very, and I'm sure for others that were on the line, very, very meaningful as we celebrate Earth Day. So thank you both so much.
Thank you. Everybody go
Thanks,
outside
Carol.
and enjoy it. I don't know what your weather is, but go look at the birds and bees and butterflies.
I don't know. Now we're talking about the birds and the bees. We're going in another direction.
I wasn't going that direction, but sure, you go there.
I heard you say birds and bees, Carol. No, this was really lovely. Thank you both so much. And Mary, we can get together on how to get all of that mailed out to the community. So
Yeah, I know Monday's your day off, so I'm not going to come for your day off.
well, I'm happy to work whenever, but we'll talk about, we'll get it out early in the week. So hopefully you all have it before the weekend. Would be lovely. So
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
thank you so much.
Thanks, Carol.
Great program. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.